Ukraine live updates. Putin recognizes two separatist regions in fiery speech. Moscow. President Vladimir V. Putin announced Monday evening that Russia would recognize the independence of two territories in Ukraine controlled by Moscow-backed separatists, further escalating tensions in what Western nations fear could lead to one of the biggest conflicts in Europe since World War II. Mr. Putin gave a lengthy televised address in which he accused Ukraine of being a puppet of the United States and said its citizens were being brutalized by its government. Mr. Putin made the case that Ukraine is by history and makeup an integral part of Russia. Colleagues, comrades, close ones, relatives, those who are tied up with us in family and blood ties. Mr. Putin also laid out a long history of grievances since the fall of the Soviet Union and the loss of the states that once made it up. We gave these republics the right to leave the Union without any terms and conditions, Putin said. This is just madness. Mr. Putin spoke after the Kremlin said in a statement that he had spoken by phone with President Emmanuel Macron of France and Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany. The President of Russia said that he intended to sign the relevant decree in the near future, the Kremlin said. The President of France and the Federal Chancellor of Germany expressed their disappointment with this development. At the same time, they indicated their readiness to continue contacts. Mr. Putin is recognizing the territory's independence, the Kremlin said earlier, in the face of the military aggression of the Ukrainian authorities, as a result of which the civilian population is suffering. Ukraine denies having any plans to launch a military offensive against the separatist regions and says Russia is staging acts of Ukrainian aggression to justify an incursion. His phone calls with the German and French leaders came after an extraordinary session of the Russian Security Council at which Mr. Putin accused the United States and its allies of using Ukraine as an instrument of confrontation with Russia. He said it posed a serious, very big threat to us. The move is a high-stakes tactic by Mr. Putin that threatens to engage Russia and Ukraine in a deadly military conflict and sharply escalate Moscow's conflict with the West. The separatist enclaves claim all of Ukraine's eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions as their territory, while controlling only about one-third of them. It was not immediately clear whether Mr. Putin would recognize the enclaves in their de facto borders or would seek to expand them by force. Earlier on Monday, Russian state television showed video of the Russian-backed leaders of separatist territories in eastern Ukraine appealing directly to Mr. Putin to recognize their independence. Russia's lower house of parliament passed a resolution making such an appeal to Mr. Putin last week. Russia has conducted an enormous troop buildup to Ukraine's north, east and south, which Western officials say could be used to conduct a large-scale invasion. President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia has recognized the independence of two separatist regions in Ukraine, a move many fear may be the spark for a Russian military intervention against Ukraine. The act of recognition is fraught with meaning because the borders claimed by the Russia-backed leaders of the two breakaway regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, extend beyond territory they now control, and spill over into space controlled by the Ukrainian army. Russia's recognition of the two regions, the so-called Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic, could allow separatist leaders to request military help from Russia, further easing a path for a military offensive, Ukrainian officials say. Ukraine would likely interpret that as Russian troops entering Ukrainian territory. The conflict in the separatist regions began in 2014, when rebels loyal to Russia seized government buildings in Donetsk and Luhansk, beginning a long trench war with Ukrainian forces. More than 13,000 people have died in fighting in the region since.